A racist judge laughs at a black veteran as he denies his claim for the benefits he earned. But that judge has no idea who he is talking to, and he has just made the biggest, and last, mistake of his career. This is the story of how one man's bottomless arrogance led to his complete and total destruction. The courtroom is a kingdom. And Judge Arthur Callahan is its absolute monarch. He sits enthroned, a mountain of black robes and cheap sanctimony, his face a florid map of petty cruelties. The mahogany bench before him is not a symbol of justice, but a barricade. It separates him from the lesser creatures who scuttle into his domain, begging for scraps from the table of the law. His gavel is not a tool of order. It is a hammer, and every person before him is a nail. The air in Department 12 of the Veterans Affairs Administrative Court is thick and stagnant, smelling of old paper, dust, and desperation. The fluorescent lights overhead hum a monotonous, sickly tune, casting a pale, unforgiving light on the worn linoleum floors. The American flag in the corner, its colors muted by a film of grime, seems to hang its head in shame. This is a place where hope comes to die, suffocated by bureaucracy and casual contempt. Judge Callahan surveys his realm with a proprietary air. He sees the rows of tired faces, the slumped shoulders, the cheap, ill-fitting suits. He sees them not as men and women who served their country, but as inconveniences. Ticks on the hide of the system he commands. His gaze lands on the men standing before the petitioner's lectern. Samuel Thorne. The name on the docket is just another line of text to Callahan. Another number to be processed and discarded. He sees a man in his late 60s, tall but stooped, as if carrying a weight that has long since fused to his bones. The man's suit is dark gray, impeccably clean but hopelessly outdated, the fabric worn thin at the elbows and collar. It hangs on his spare frame, a testament to a time when he might have been broader, stronger. He sees dark skin, weathered by sun and time. He sees hands, resting calmly on the wooden lectern, with knuckles like knots in an old rope. He sees eyes that are deep-set and weary, holding a quiet sorrow that Callahan mistakes for weakness. He sees a target. "Mr. Thorne," Callahan booms, his voice a gravelly avalanche designed to intimidate. He enunciates the "Mr." with a sneer, a deliberate refusal to acknowledge any past rank or title. "We are here to review your appeal regarding the denial of benefits for, let's see." He makes a great show of flipping through the file, a thin stack of papers that represents a man's life and pain. He holds a page up, squinting at it as if the words themselves are an affront. "Ah, yes. Post-traumatic stress disorder. And, I see, chronic pain in the lower back and left knee. Stemming from your service in Vietnam." He says the word Vietnam as if it is a dirty secret, a source of national embarrassment rather than a chapter of sacrifice. Samuel Thorne does not flinch. He stands straight, his posture a silent rebuke to the judge's contempt. He says nothing. His silence is a vessel, waiting to be filled. To his left, a young woman in a rumpled blazer shuffles her papers nervously. This is Emily Albright, a public defender fresh out of law school, drowning in a caseload that would crush a lawyer with 20 years of experience. She is well-meaning, earnest, and completely out of her depth. She is a guppy swimming in a shark tank. "Your Honor," she begins, her voice barely a whisper. Mr. Thorne's service record is exemplary. He served 2 tours with the 173rd Airborne. The documentation from his primary care physician clearly outlines the severity of his symptoms, which are consistent with injuries sustained during combat operations and the subsequent psychological trauma. Callahan lets out a short, sharp bark of a laugh. It is a sound devoid of humor, a weapon meant to wound. Consistent, counsel. What they are is convenient. This man has been a civilian for 50 years. 50. And now, suddenly, he decides the government owes him a living because he has a bad back and some nightmares. The timing is, shall we say, suspicious. The judge leans forward, his bulk straining the fabric of his robes. He points a fat finger at Thorne. "Let me tell you what I see, Mr. Thorne. I see a man looking for a handout. The country has moved on. We have new wars, new soldiers with real problems. Not someone dredging up memories from half a century ago for a paycheck. The cruelty is breathtaking in its casualness. It hangs in the stale air, a poison gas." Samuel Thorne's expression does not change. The deep-set eyes remain fixed on the judge. The knotted hands do not tremble. He is a statue of forbearance, a monument to dignity under fire. He has faced far worse than this bloated man in a black dress. He has faced men who wanted to kill him, not just humiliate him. The judge is an amateur in the art of intimidation compared to the enemies he once fought. Emily Albright, however, is visibly shaken. Her face flushes with a mixture of anger and fear. Your Honor, that is a grossly unfair characterization. My client isn't looking for a handout. He is asking for the benefits promised to him, the care he is entitled to for the injuries he sustained in service to this country. His inability to hold steady work, his episodes of anxiety, his chronic pain, it's all in the file. It has been a lifelong struggle. A struggle he seems to have remembered only now that he is approaching retirement age, Callahan retorts, waving a dismissive hand. I've read the file, counsel. I see a string of menial jobs. I see long periods of unemployment. I don't see a hero struggling with the hidden wounds of war. I see a man who has failed to make a success of himself, and now he wants to blame it on something that happened in a jungle on the other side of the world 50 years ago. The lie is audacious. The file, if read with an ounce of compassion, tells a different story. It tells of a man who tried. Who worked as a mechanic until his hands shook too much. Who drove a delivery truck until his back gave out. Who took night security jobs until the quiet and the dark became too much to bear, filled with ghosts from the past. It is a story of quiet desperation, of a man trying to outrun his own mind. But Judge Callahan does not read for compassion. He reads for confirmation of his own prejudices. He looks down at Samuel Thorne, a smirk playing on his lips. He is enjoying this. This is the part of the job he truly loves. The breaking of spirits. The assertion of his dominance. So, Mr. Thorne, he says, his voice dripping with condescending sweetness. Tell me. What makes you so special? Why should the taxpayers of this great nation foot the bill for your alleged discomforts? For the first time, Samuel Thorne speaks. His voice is low and steady, with a rasp that speaks of disuse. It carries an unexpected weight, a resonance that seems to quiet the humming of the lights. I am not special, sir. Just 3 words. No title. Sir, a mark of respect he has not been shown, but which he gives automatically. It is a sign of his discipline, his character. Callahan's smirk widens. He sees the simple address as a sign of submission. He has him. No, you are not, the judge agrees, leaning back in his throne-like chair. The leather groans under his weight. You are one of thousands. Men who want something for nothing. Who think a few years in uniform entitles them to a lifetime pension. This country has debts, Mr. Thorne. Real debts. We can't afford to indulge every fanciful claim that comes across my desk. He picks up his gavel, tapping it softly against the wooden block. A cat playing with a mouse. Your appeal is based on a diagnosis from a civilian doctor. The VA's own assessment found insufficient evidence to link your current conditions directly to your military service. It's a classic case of he said, she said. And in my courtroom, he says, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, what the government's doctors say carries a little more weight. We have a sworn affidavit from Dr. Ramirez, Emily Albright interjects, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. He's a leading specialist in trauma-related disorders. A hired gun, Callahan scoffs. A bleeding heart with a prescription pad. I am not persuaded, counsel. Not in the least. He looks back to Samuel. The man's stillness is beginning to irritate him. He is not cowering. He is not pleading. He is just standing there. Watching. It is unnerving. Callahan decides to escalate. He will break this man. He will make him show the weakness he knows is lurking beneath that calm facade. You know, the problem is one of character, the judge muses, as if speaking to himself, but loud enough for the entire room to hear. The court reporter's fingers fly across her steno machine, capturing every poisonous word. Back then, men came home, they put their service behind them, and they got to work. They built families, communities, businesses. They didn't whine. They didn't ask for handouts. They had grit. It seems a certain kind of man lacks that quality. They always have their hand out. The racial undertone is as subtle as a sledgehammer. It is meant to sting. It is meant to provoke. Samuel Thorne's eyes narrow, just a fraction. It is the only sign that the barb has landed. But he remains silent. Ms. Albright, however, cannot let it stand. Objection, Your Honor. That is inappropriate and prejudicial. My client's character is not on trial. Everything is on trial in my courtroom, counsel, Callahan snaps, his jovial mask slipping to reveal the raw ugliness beneath. Especially character. And I am finding your clients to be sorely lacking. This entire appeal strikes me as an act of profound entitlement. He slams the file shut. The sound echoes in the silent room like a gunshot. I have seen enough. I have heard enough. This is a waste of the court's time and the taxpayers' money. He lifts his gavel high, preparing to deliver the final blow. Appeal denied. He brings the gavel down with a crack of finality. Furthermore, he adds, his eyes glinting with malice, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for a possible investigation into fraudulent claims. Attempting to defraud the United States government is a serious felony, Mr. Thorne. A very serious felony. This is the breaking point. This is the moment where the system is not just failing, but actively turning on the men it was designed to serve. He came seeking help, and he is leaving with a denial and the threat of a prison sentence. Emily Albright gasps, her face pale with shock. Your Honor, you can't be serious. There is absolutely no basis for that. It's an abuse of your authority. Are you telling me how to do my job, counsel? Callahan roars, his face turning a shade of purple. You are perilously close to a contempt citation yourself. One more word out of you, and you'll be spending the night in a holding cell to contemplate your professional misconduct. She shrinks back, silenced. Defeated. Tears of frustration well in her eyes. The judge turns his triumphant, hateful gaze back to Samuel Thorne. He expects to see fear. Panic. Desperation. He sees none of it. Instead, he sees the man slowly, deliberately, reach into the inside pocket of his worn gray jacket. Callahan's eyes narrow with suspicion. What are you doing? Bailiff. A burly guard standing by the wall tenses, his hand moving towards his sidearm. Easy, son, Samuel Thorne says, his voice calm and even. He does not look at the bailiff. His eyes are locked on the judge. I'm just getting a piece of paper. His movements are slow, measured. He pulls out a folded, yellowed document. It is worn at the creases, soft as old linen. He carefully unfolds it and places it on the lectern before him. Then he reaches into his other pocket and produces a heavy, star-shaped medal suspended from a pale blue ribbon dotted with white stars. He lays the medal on top of the paper. It sits on the dark wood of the lectern, catching the sickly fluorescent light. The entire room seems to fall silent. Even the humming of the lights seems to fade. Your Honor, Samuel Thorne says, and his voice is different now. The rasp is gone. It is clear, cold, and rings with an authority that eclipses everyone in the room, including the men on the bench. You spoke of character. You spoke of what makes a man special. You questioned my service and my integrity. I believe this document might provide some clarification. Callahan squints. From his elevated bench, he cannot make out the details. He sees only a piece of old paper and a piece of metal. What is that nonsense? Some trinket you bought at a surplus store. I have made my ruling. This hearing is over. Bailiff, remove this man. The bailiff takes a step forward, but hesitates. There is something in Thorne's posture, in his voice, that gives him pause. Something that warns him not to get any closer. I suggest you read it, Samuel Thorne says. His voice is not a request. It is a command. Or, if your eyesight is failing you, perhaps you would permit my counsel to read it into the record. Emily Albright stares at the document, then at the medal. Her eyes widen in dawning comprehension. She looks at her client, this quiet, stooped man, and sees him for the first time. Awe and disbelief wore on her face. Your Honor, she says, her voice trembling but now filled with a new and ferocious energy. With the court's permission, I would like to read the text of the official citation for the Medal of Honor, awarded by the President of the United States to Sergeant Samuel Thorne for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. The words hang in the air. Medal of Honor. The highest and most prestigious military decoration. An award for which more than half the recipients have died. A symbol of almost superhuman courage. The courtroom is utterly still. The air crackles. The kingdom has been breached. The monarch is, for the first time, speechless. Judge Callahan's face drains of all color. The ruddy complexion vanishes, replaced by a pasty, grayish pallor. His jaw, which had been set in a pugnacious jut, goes slack. A fine sheen of sweat beads on his forehead and upper lip. He stares at the medal, then at the men, as if seeing a ghost. The smirk is gone. The arrogance is gone. In its place is a raw, naked thing. Fear. He has not just insulted a veteran. He has not just dismissed a benefits claim. He has, in a public forum, on the record, denigrated, threatened, and accused of fraud a recipient of the Medal of Honor. This is not a mistake. This is a career-ending, life-altering cataclysm. And he knows it. The bailiff, a veteran himself, recognizes the pale blue ribbon. He straightens his posture instinctively, his expression shifting from suspicion to profound respect. He takes a half-step back from the lectern, as if creating a space of honor. The court reporter's fingers freeze over her keys, her eyes wide. "Go on, counsel," Judge Callahan whispers. His booming voice has vanished, replaced by a dry, cracking husk. He cannot stop it now. To try would only make it worse. The record must be made. Emily Albright picks up the citation. Her hands shake, not from fear, but from a surge of righteous adrenaline. She takes a deep breath and begins to read, her voice growing stronger and clearer with every word. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Sergeant Samuel Thorne, United States Army, for actions on May 12, 1969, in the A Shau Valley, Republic of Vietnam. She pauses, letting the weight of the introduction settle. On that day, Sergeant Thorne's platoon was ambushed by a numerically superior enemy force. Pinned down in an open field under withering machine gun and rocket-propelled grenade fire, the platoon sustained heavy casualties within the first few minutes of the engagement. The platoon leader was killed, and the platoon sergeant was gravely wounded. Samuel Thorne's eyes are distant now, looking not at the judge, but through him, into a past that is more real than this sterile room. He is seeing the green of the jungle, smelling the cordite and the mud. With complete disregard for his own safety, Albright continues, her voice ringing with the heroism of the words she speaks. Sergeant Thorne assumed command. He crawled under a relentless hail of bullets to pull 2 wounded comrades to the relative safety of a bomb crater. He then single-handedly charged an enemy machine gun nest that was responsible for the majority of the American casualties. Callahan grips the edge of his bench. His knuckles are white. He feels a tightness in his chest. The room is closing in on him. Every word is a nail in his coffin. Armed only with his service rifle and several hand grenades, he advanced through the open, eliminating the 3-man enemy crew. Wounded in the leg and shoulder by shrapnel from an enemy grenade, he refused medical aid. Instead, he organized the remaining platoon members into a defensive perimeter, directing their fire and redistributing ammunition from the fallen. The judge can see it. He can see the reporters who will get a hold of this transcript. The headlines. The veterans groups. The politicians. His career, his reputation, his carefully constructed world of power and privilege, is turning to dust before his eyes. For 6 hours, Albright reads, her voice thick with emotion. Sergeant Thorne held that position against repeated enemy assaults. He repeatedly exposed himself to enemy fire to rescue the wounded and to direct airstrikes that he called in on a radio taken from his fallen leader. When the radio was destroyed by a bullet, he used colored smoke grenades to mark enemy positions for helicopter gunships, drawing intense fire to his own location. The story unfolds, a tapestry of impossible bravery. He carried the wounded platoon sergeant on his back for 2 kilometers to the extraction point. He refused to be evacuated until every one of his men, living and dead, was aboard the helicopters. By his undaunted courage, inspiring leadership, and unwavering devotion to his fellow soldiers, Sergeant Samuel Thorne saved the lives of at least 8 men and was directly responsible for the successful defense of his unit's position. His extraordinary heroism and selflessness at the risk of his own life are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, the 173rd Airborne Brigade, and the United States Army. Emily Albright finishes reading. She gently places the citation back on the lectern. The silence that follows is deafening. It is a silence filled with judgment, with awe, and with the sound of a man's world collapsing. Samuel Thorne looks at Judge Callahan. His face is a mask of quiet dignity, but his eyes are like embers. There is no triumph in them, only a profound and weary sadness. He did not want this. He did not want to unearth these ghosts. He just wanted the care he was promised, the peace he had earned. But this man, in his arrogance, had forced his hand. "You asked what makes me special," Thorne says, his voice once again low and steady. "Nothing. I was a soldier. I did my duty. I kept a promise I made to the men I served with, to get them home. I have spent the 50 years since trying to live a quiet life. The pain in my back and in my knee is a constant reminder of that day. The names and faces of the men who didn't make it home are what visit me in the dark." He pauses, letting his words sink in. "I did not come here for a handout, Judge. I came here because the doctors told me the pain would only get worse, and the nightmares were not going away. I came here for help. The help your office is supposed to provide. Instead, you called me a liar. You called me a fraud. You insulted my character and threatened me with prison." He leans forward slightly, his voice dropping but losing none of its power. "You did not just deny my claim. You dishonored the memory of the men who died in that valley. You dishonored the uniform I wore. And you dishonored the medal that was bestowed not just on me, but on all of them, because they are the ones who truly earned it." Callahan tries to speak. He opens his mouth, but only a dry, croaking sound comes out. His mind is a maelstrom of panic. He looks around the courtroom, at the faces of the bailiff, the clerk, the reporter. He sees no sympathy. He sees only contempt. He is no longer a king on his throne. He is a fraud in a black robe. The circumstances. I was not aware. He stammers, his hands fluttering helplessly on his bench. "You were not aware because you did not care to be," Thorne cuts him off, his voice sharp as broken glass. "You did not read my file. Or if you did, you read it only to find ammunition for your own prejudice. You saw my skin color before you saw my service record. You saw a poor man before you saw a soldier. You saw what you wanted to see." Suddenly, the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom swing open with a resounding bang that makes everyone jump. Two men in dark, immaculate suits stride into the room. They move with a purpose and authority that instantly commands attention. They are followed by two uniformed United States Marshals. The man in the lead is older, with silver hair and a face that looks like it was chiseled from granite. He scans the room, his eyes finally landing on the scene at the front, the stunned judge, the triumphant young lawyer, and the quiet, dignified veteran with the Medal of Honor on the lectern before him. "Judge Arthur Callahan," the man says, his voice a low, authoritative baritone that fills the room. Callahan looks at him, his eyes wide with a new, more potent terror. He recognizes this man. Everyone in the federal justice system recognizes this man. This is David Sterling, the chief investigator for the Department of Justice's Office of Professional Responsibility. He is a man who hunts corrupt judges for a living. "My name is David Sterling," the investigator says, confirming Callahan's worst fears. "I believe you are familiar with my office. We have an appointment. Effective immediately, you are suspended from the bench, pending a full federal inquiry." Callahan's world implodes. Suspended? On what grounds? This is an outrage, he sputters, a pathetic echo of his former bluster. Sterling walks slowly towards the bench, his footsteps unnaturally loud in the silent room. He does not even glance at Samuel Thorne, though it is clear he knows exactly who he is. "The grounds are numerous, Judge," Sterling says, his voice cold as a morgue slab. "For the past 6 months, my office has been conducting an investigation into this court. An investigation prompted by an anonymous, but extraordinarily detailed, tip. A tip that alleged a pattern of bias, judicial misconduct, and potential financial crimes." He stops directly in front of the bench, forcing Callahan to look down at him. The power dynamic is now fully, grotesquely inverted. We have been monitoring your rulings, Judge. We have noted a statistically impossible rate of denial for claims filed by minority veterans. We have been examining your financial records, which show a number of questionable deposits from private insurance companies who benefit every time a VA claim is denied. Sterling smiles, a chilling, predatory expression. We had a strong case already, Judge. A very strong case. But we were missing that one, perfect, public example of your judicial temperament. Something undeniable. Something on the record. Something that would show the entire world exactly who and what you are. He gestures towards Samuel Thorne. And then Mr. Thorne came along. He agreed to help us. He agreed to walk into this courtroom today, knowing you would treat him exactly as you have treated so many others. He agreed to be the final piece of evidence. The nail in your coffin. The revelation hits Callahan like a physical blow. He slumps back in his chair, a gasp of air escaping his lungs. He was set up. This entire hearing was a sting operation. The quiet old man was not a victim. He was the bait. You can't. We can, Sterling says flatly. And we have. Everything that was said in this room today has been recorded by a secondary source, just in case the official transcript was somehow altered. Your threats, your insults, your referral for a fraudulent claim investigation against a Medal of Honor recipient. It's all there. He turns to the marshals. Gentlemen. The two marshals ascend the steps to the bench. One of them speaks, his voice respectful but firm. Judge Callahan, please stand up and remove your robe. For a moment, Callahan does not move. He is frozen, a monument to his own ruin. Then, with trembling hands, he fumbles with the zipper of his robe. The black fabric, once a symbol of his power, now feels like a shroud. He shrugs it off his shoulders, and it falls in a heap on the chair. Underneath, he is just a man. An overweight, sweating, terrified man in a rumpled white shirt and a stained tie. His authority is gone. Stripped away as easily as the robe. One of the marshals produces a pair of handcuffs. The sharp, metallic click as they lock around Callahan's wrists is the loudest sound anyone has ever heard in this room. Arthur Callahan, the marshal says, reciting the formal words that Callahan himself has spoken to countless others. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, deprivation of rights under color of law, and soliciting a bribe. You have the right to remain silent. As they lead him away, past the bench that was once his throne, his eyes meet Samuel Thorne's. In that moment, he sees no hatred, no triumph in the veteran's gaze. He sees only a quiet, profound pity. And that is the most devastating judgment of all. Thorne had not come for revenge. He had come for justice. Not just for himself, but for every veteran Callahan had wronged, every voice he had silenced. Sterling approaches the lectern. He looks at Thorne with an expression of deep respect. Mr. Thorne. On behalf of the Department of Justice, thank you. You have performed another great service for your country today. I just did my duty, sir, Samuel Thorne replies, his voice steady. Same as always. He carefully picks up his medal and the yellowed citation, folding the paper with gentle hands before placing them back in his jacket pocket. They are not trophies to be displayed. They are private relics, symbols of a promise kept long ago. Emily Albright, who has been watching the entire scene unfold with a mixture of shock and elation, finally finds her voice. What happens now? Sterling turns to her. Now, counsel, we begin the real work. Every case that Judge Callahan has presided over in the last 10 years will be reopened and reviewed. Every denial will be scrutinized. We have a lot of wrongs to right. He gives her a small, encouraging smile. And from what I saw today, you are just the kind of lawyer we need to help us do it. For the first time all day, a genuine smile breaks across Emily Albright's face. In 1 hour, her career has transformed from a Sisyphean struggle into a crusade. As the federal agents secure the courtroom, sealing files and computers as evidence, Samuel Thorne walks quietly towards the exit. His steps are slow, the limp from his old wounds more pronounced now that the adrenaline has faded. He has won. The dragon has been slain. But the ghosts of that valley are still with him. They always will be. He didn't fix his past. But he had, in this small, forgotten courtroom, secured a better future for the soldiers who would come after him. And for a man who had lived his life by a code of service, that was a victory worth fighting for. The war at home was finally over. The fallout is not a storm. It is a cleansing fire. The arrest of Judge Arthur Callahan sends shockwaves through the city's legal and political establishments. The story is a media sensation, a perfect narrative of hubris and comeuppance. The image of the disgraced judge being led from his own courtroom in handcuffs is on the front page of every newspaper and leads every local news broadcast. But it is the quiet, dignified face of Samuel Thorne, and the story of his heroism, that captures the heart of the nation. Reporters camp outside his modest home, but he refuses all interviews. He issues a single, simple statement through Emily Albright. "I only ask that you honor the men and women who serve." That is all. His refusal to seize the spotlight only amplifies his legend. For Arthur Callahan, the destruction is absolute. And it is swift. His case is fast-tracked through the federal system, the evidence against him overwhelming. The audio recordings from the sting operation are played in open court, his venomous, prejudiced words echoing for all to hear. His co-conspirators, the insurance executives who paid him bribes disguised as consulting fees, turn on him one by one, pleading for lighter sentences in exchange for their testimony. His defense is a pathetic shambles, built on denials that crumble under the weight of bank statements and sworn affidavits. He is found guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing is a grim parody of the proceedings he once presided over. He stands before a stern, no-nonsense federal judge, a broken man stripped of all his former power. He weeps. He begs for mercy. He talks about his family, his community service, the stress of his job. The judge is unmoved. "You were entrusted with one of our nation's most sacred duties," she says, her voice cold steel. "To care for those who have borne the battle. You twisted that sacred trust into a personal fiefdom of cruelty and greed. You preyed on the vulnerable, and you sold your office to the highest bidder. But your greatest crime, Mr. Callahan, was your arrogance. You believed you were untouchable. You are not." Arthur Callahan is sentenced to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. His judicial pension is seized. His law license is permanently revoked. The government places liens on his assets to pay back every dollar he took in bribes. He leaves the courtroom not as a judge, but as federal inmate 77B-12. He will spend the rest of his life in a concrete cell, a forgotten relic of a corrupt system that has been purged. The fire spreads. The investigation launched by David Sterling's office uncovers a deep rot within the Regional Veterans Affairs Administration. Clerks who lost files for veterans of color, doctors who wrote intentionally vague assessments for a fee, administrators who looked the other way, all are rooted out. A dozen more arrests are made. The entire office is gutted and rebuilt from the ground up. For the heroes of the story, the rewards are as profound as the villains' punishments are severe. Emily Albright becomes a minor celebrity in the legal world. Job offers pour in from prestigious law firms across the country. She turns them all down. Instead, she accepts a position with the Department of Justice, working directly under David Sterling on a new national task force dedicated to rooting out corruption in veterans' courts. She has found her calling, not in a high-rise office, but on the front lines of the fight for justice. Samuel Thorne's benefits claim is immediately approved and backdated 50 years. The lump sum payment is substantial, enough to ensure he will never have to worry about money again. But that is the least of it. The Department of Veterans Affairs, in a public act of atonement, offers him the highest quality medical care available, including new, cutting-edge therapies for his chronic pain and PTSD. But Thorne finds a new purpose. A national veterans advocacy group, inspired by his story, asks him to join their board of directors. He is hesitant at first, a man who has always shunned the spotlight. But he realizes he has a voice now, a platform. He can do more for his brothers and sisters in arms than just live a quiet life. He accepts. He travels the country, speaking not about his own heroism, but about the systemic challenges facing veterans. He speaks to Congress. He meets with generals at the Pentagon. He lobbies for better funding, for more accountability, for a system that treats every veteran with the dignity and respect they have earned. He is no longer just Sergeant Thorne, the quiet hero. He is Samuel Thorne, the conscience of a nation. The systemic change is the most lasting legacy. Spurred by the Callahan scandal, Congress passes the Veterans Bill of Rights, a landmark piece of legislation that streamlines the benefits process, establishes a powerful independent oversight committee for VA courts, and mandates severe criminal penalties for any official found to have discriminated against a veteran. The law is passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. No politician wants to be on the wrong side of Samuel Thorne's story. Hundreds of cases that Callahan had denied are reopened. Families of deceased veterans receive the benefits they were long owed. Men and women who had given up hope find their claims approved. The fire has burned away the rot, and from the ashes, something new and better begins to grow. A system that is a little more just. A world that is a little more fair. 2 years later. The room is not a courtroom. It is a community center, freshly painted, bright and airy. Sunlight streams through large windows, illuminating the faces of the 24 men and women seated in a circle of chairs. They are of all ages, all races, all branches of service. They are all survivors. At the head of the circle sits Samuel Thorne. He wears no suit today, just a simple collared shirt and comfortable slacks. The stoop in his shoulders is less pronounced. The weariness in his eyes has been replaced by a calm, steady light. He looks younger. He looks at peace. This is a support group he started, funded by the foundation he established with his back pay. It is a place for veterans to talk, to share their stories, to find community in the one place they are truly understood, among each other. A young man across from him is speaking. He is maybe 25, with tattoos covering his arms and a haunted look in his eyes that Thorne knows all too well. He speaks of IEDs, of lost friends, of the suffocating anxiety that makes it impossible to sleep, impossible to work, impossible to connect with the family that loves him. And the VA, they just don't get it, the young man says, his voice cracking. I go to the court, and the judge, he looked at me like I was garbage. Like I was making it all up. He said I was too young to have problems like this. He denied everything. The other members of the group nod in grim understanding. They have all heard stories like this. Some have lived them. When the young man finishes, a heavy silence fills the room. Samuel Thorne leans forward. What was the judge's name? He asks, his voice gentle. Callahan. The young man spits the name out like a curse. Judge Arthur Callahan. A flicker of the old sadness passes through Thorne's eyes, a ghost of the men who stood in that oppressive courtroom 2 years ago. But it is gone as quickly as it came. He smiles, a warm, reassuring expression. That man will never hurt another veteran again. I can promise you that. He looks at the young man, and in him, he sees himself 50 years ago, wounded, lost, and facing a system that did not care. But your case, Thorne continues, we can fix that. After this meeting, you and I are going to make a phone call. I know a very good lawyer at the Department of Justice. Her name is Emily Albright. She specializes in cases just like yours. A flicker of hope ignites in the young man's eyes. It is the first time he has felt it in a very long time. Samuel Thorne leans back in his chair. He looks around the circle, at the faces of his comrades. He did not ask to be a hero. He did not ask to be a symbol. He was just a soldier who did his duty, a man who kept his promises. And in the end, his greatest battle was not fought in a jungle halfway around the world, but in a dusty courtroom, for the soul of a system. The moral of the story is simple, etched into the very fabric of this new reality he has helped to build. Arrogance is a fortress built on sand. Power, when wielded without compassion, will inevitably author its own destruction. And true strength is not found in a gavel or a robe, but in the quiet dignity of a man who, when tested, remembers the promises he made, and the person he has always been. Justice, sometimes, is just a matter of reminding the world who the real heroes are.